Hello, everybody. Welcome to Behind Their Success podcast. I'm Peyton Squires, the host, and today we have on Rick Turoczy. Rick is a driving force behind Portland startup scene. He is the co-founder of the Portland Incubator Experiment and founder of the influential Silicon Forest blog. Rick's passion for building communities and empowering entrepreneurs has shaped the region's innovation landscape. Rick, welcome on the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Thanks for making time.
Yeah, Rick, so in my time kind of researching a little bit, you are like the entrepreneur guy of Portland or one of them, right?
Yeah, I'm like that. I'm more like the bottleneck of entrepreneurship. Yeah, like I wish there were more people.
Like if we can just get Rick out of the way.
Yeah, exactly.
And I knew just looking at a little of your content out there and whatnot, I was like, okay, this is going to be a really great conversation. This guy loves business as much as I do, and it's going to be really cool. So, Rick, why don't you give the listeners just a little, rundown? Who's Rick and what is he about and what does he do?
Yeah, love to. I always feel bad. People are like, what are your hobbies? And I'm like, hobbies? I just like work on startups all the time and really enjoy that. So I'm in Portland, Oregon, west coast of the United States. I've been here about 30 years. And the whole time I've been here, I've worked in venture-funded tech startups. For 12 years, I was like an early stage employee at those startups. And then I was like, oh, I've totally learned enough to do companies on my own. And then tried that a couple of times. I was like, no, I'm not a founder. And so wound up with this opportunity to start F.A.I.L, the Portland Incubator Experiment. And it's been kind of an ongoing experiment for about 15 years. We really work on trying to figure out how to engage more established players like corporations or educational institutions or government entities with startup founders for mutual benefit so that the startup community is stronger and healthier. And then, through that work, I've wound up with the opportunity to work with people all over the world, working on like startup community stuff or working with founders and mentorship and that kind of thing. So I would say if there's been one consistent thread looking backwards through my life, it's like I'm one of those people who really enjoys helping other people become the best version of themselves or kind of achieve what they want to achieve. And so that's where I've kind of focused my career so far.
Yeah, man, that's a good synopsis. So like what inspired you to start building communities, particularly entrepreneur type communities?
Yeah, great question. I think it was my experience in trying to be a founder and coming to the realization that even at that point in time, which was, practically last century, so a while ago, but it dawned on me how much of what I thought I understood about entrepreneurship was actually just mythology, untrue. Like it wasn't really how it worked. Like it wasn't one of those situations where you come up with a good idea, somebody writes you a couple checks for a couple $1 million and you're off to the races. Like that's not really how it works. And so going through that experience, it kind of dawned on me that I had an opportunity to help people realize what it was really like and hopefully help them make a reasonable decision sooner than I was able to. So I kind of fumbled my way through being a founder a couple different times. And it took me a really long time to figure out that wasn't me. That wasn't what I wanted to do. And so the motivation is really, how can I help people get to that go, no go decision as quickly as possible?
Yeah. How to, help them think through that and see, I guess what path is best for them.
Yep.
Speak to why you think, I guess, communities are so important. I mean, other than, I guess that one decision there, but why specifically do you be passionate about building the community?
I think part of that mythology is the kind of like overnight success, brilliant idea makes it, an amazing $1 billion company. And when it comes right down to it, like people don't succeed without other people. They don't succeed without employees that help them achieve their vision. And the community is the primary feeder for that. So not only the people that are needed, but really the emotional support or like the encouragement to keep building or to, go to people who've solved a problem previously who can help you figure out where you should be going. It's really the community that provides the foundation for all of that. So without a strong community, it's really hard to have a strong kind of entrepreneurial bent to the town. And I've just found that Portland tends to be very receptive to that from a cultural standpoint. It's very much a kind of give first kind of community, kind of pay it forward kind of community. And I think that's true of most startup and entrepreneurial communities.
Yeah. And 100% agree with your kind of assessment there of the need of a community, right? Something that I absolutely did stay out of community for too long. Like I would say, first probably 6, 7, 8 years of my business, I kind of ran in isolation, and a lot of that was probably just me. I didn't know what I was capable of. I didn't really know what I was building, all these different things. But it once I got into community, other like-minded business owners and particularly business owners that were doing things at a higher level than me, it was game changing, right? It was like, oh, these people are doing this and doing that, and like, well, he's a normal guy like me. I mean, I can do that same thing, right? Like it just normalizes everything, right? Community is powerful, and it's like, it's just human nature, right? Like we're all going to be very similar to the people that we constantly surround ourselves with. So back to growth mindset, Rick.
Yep.
How do you, when you work a lot of different startups and in your work, obviously, how do you cultivate like a growth mindset in the people you're working with?
It's really challenging. It's a lot like, I always kind of equate it to parenting. Like you can tell a kid, don't do that, you're going to get hurt. Don't do that, you're going to get hurt. Until they fall over and get hurt, like they're not really ready to listen.
Yeah. That story doesn't really hit home.
Yeah, exactly. And so like a lot of it is just constant encouragement, constant feedback. But the ideal, I think, where we're trying to get with a founder is helping them understand that everything is a data point. So I think we've been conditioned to think that only positives are data points, and no's or negatives are not data points, but they're equally valuable. And so where I'm always working with founders is trying through that growth mindset kind of concept is to help them understand that you're just trying to navigate a path between no's and yeses and hopefully arc toward more yeses eventually. But especially in the earlier stages, like a fast no is often more important than a maybe or a yes in the future kind of thing.
Yeah. My clients or even, people in sales or whatever, it's like, no is your second favorite answer.
Right.
Maybe it's like the worst.
Yeah.
And you talk about growth mindset there, like dealing with failure early, nobody wants to quote unquote fail. I'm in a mastermind group and they were we bring our kids to a bunch of stuff.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Teaching our kids a bunch of stuff. And they were talking about failure and how failure is a good thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we taught the kids, failure stands for first attempt in learning, right?
Nice.
So it's a data point, like you said, right? It's a data point that tells you, okay, not that direction, or maybe it's towards that direction or whatever, right? But like you keep getting all these data points until you bump up against enough walls until you find your way through the maze, right?
Well, and I think it's super challenging, especially with kind of like the U.S. educational system. You are taught for 16 years, don't fail. Like that's got to be an A if you the worst thing you can do is make a mistake. Right. Exactly. And then immediately you get into an environment like entrepreneurship where it's almost the polar opposite. It's almost like keep pushing things, figure out where the failure points are, and that's how you're actually going to learn. And I've always been kind of curious as to whether there's an opportunity in the educational system to kind of further some of that thinking. Like even if it's on a very limited basis, like how can you introduce that concept to kids sooner rather than later?
Are you looking for a new tax experience? Looking for an advisor that actually brings you high-level ideas and proactively plans so you aren't overpaying your taxes? Or how about one that even just responds and communicates in a timely fashion? If any of that resonates with you, you probably just have a tax preparer and not a tax planner. And it is through the tax planning process where all the value is found. And when tax planning is done right, it has a positive return on investment. I'm Peyton Squires. I'm a CPA and owner of Squires Tax Planning. We work alongside entrepreneurs and high-income earners, helping them pay the least amount of income taxes, both legally and ethically. We have saved our clients hundreds of thousands of dollars through specific strategies, and we guarantee we can find multiple tax strategies that your current tax preparer hasn't told you about. If that interests you, head over to squirestaxplanning.com. There you can take our free assessment to see how likely it is that you are overpaying on your income taxes. From there, you can also book a free tax discovery call with our team to see what it would look like to have us working for you.
Hey guys, this is Peyton Squires. We had some technical difficulties with Rick's episode, so I'm kind of coming in and rounding out the episode and following up a little bit on what Rick was speaking to and giving some more of my own advice and experience around it. You know, really Rick's whole thought process is really around building authentic relationships, really, and why connecting authentically matters. It's so easy today in today's world to be kind of lost in the noise and whatnot. And there's so many different marketing and sales tactics out there that customers or potential customers are pretty burnt out on just being spammed all the time, right? Like, so it's, we're all distracted by millions of different advertisements every day and the stuff that comes through that to break through that noise as an entrepreneur. I mean, you need to be authentic. You need to be real, be yourself. When you're trying to just sell something to somebody, people can feel that, right? But if you would turn as an entrepreneur genuinely interested in the prospect and interested in helping the prospect, that really comes through in the conversation. And I think that's really where many people fail, is that they are looking for sales tactics and not necessarily looking at the customer or client as a person to serve and to take care of. And it's amazing when you actually understand that and start implementing that, how much people actually want to work with you because they can feel it. I mean, it's very powerful. Something else to follow up on it. It's not just who you know, right? It's getting in relationships that you are generally curious about, trying to come in and add value. Well, really the idea is adding value to relationships in your network without necessarily expecting anything in return. When you do that, you really are planting seeds for the long term. You're planting seeds that, while you continue to add value, like kind of what I do is post a lot of content with a lot of different value and hopefully giving people tips around, taxes, money, mindset, entrepreneurship, and all that stuff. And then I do all that. And yes, it's helpful for my business, right? Like, it's helpful as a marketing funnel to, stay top of mind to potential clients and being out there all the time and connecting with people. But it's really doing that without necessarily expecting anything in return. And it's amazing when you actually do that. It's amazing how much value you actually do get in return when you're not necessarily expecting it or trying to, manipulate a situation to have it work out in your favor, and you get value from it, right? So it's just stepping into that and being a person that is constantly adding value. The awesome thing about today's world and running a business in today's world is you're certainly not limited by geography and who you can connect with. All the different social media platforms and everything that's out there allows you to connect with potential clients, potential customers in a very non-threatening fashion, right? By branding and putting yourself out there constantly, you're going to build a lot of goodwill and adding value to people's lives. And it's amazing. You can't see that compounding effect of how that all works out in the beginning, but do that for, 3, 4, 5+ years. And it's amazing, the following and the support and the ability to attract clients online can be. But it's not a quick process, right? It's consistency, it's patience. There is no such thing as overnight success. Like, great example is this podcast, right? Like, we're pushing 100 episodes, and the compounding effect, the growth out of that, like, it's a very slow process. Podcasts don't get big quickly, generally, right? You have to build a consistent listenership, be consistent in putting out content, and that's where you get that compounding growth. And that's really in all areas of your life. Consistency, discipline, the constant of, every day I'm going to move this, move the football one more yard down the field. And that is where the growth happens. You can't see it day to day generally, right? Or you might get a little win here and there and you recognize those wins, but you can't really see, humans are very bad at understanding compounding. Just our brains aren't necessarily designed to understand that just kind of naturally very, very well. We're very linear thinker. We're very good at adding. We're not very good at like exponential growth. It's not easy for us to calculate that, but it is. It like all things, they accumulate, and it's all the million different little things that add up to some amazing content or amazing growth in your business. But it really is just the daily activities, doing it day after day after day, and letting that accumulate and add up and stack up. And when that stuff all stacks up, it's amazing when you turn around and see how far that has gone. And, it's something I've dove into seriously over the last few years, and really in personal branding and marketing myself, is putting myself out there. And, in the beginning, it was a whole lot more scary than it is today. Often we're too afraid to make that jump and, put ourselves out there because we're afraid of, what people might think, quite honestly. It has really nothing to do with, most people aren't afraid to fail. They're afraid to have other people see them fail. So, I encourage any of the listeners here that, if you're sitting on the sidelines thinking about, making content for your business or putting yourself out there as a personal brand and building authority and expertise, you just got to do it. Your first video is going to suck. Your first podcast is going to suck. Mine don't suck as much as they used to, and they don't, right? I've gotten better, and it's not a comparison thing. It's a comparison to yourself that allows that growth, right? You want to get 1% better every day or whatever that goal is. It's a constant growth and moving forward. So personal branding is amazing, to be able to drive leads and drive curiosity about what you have going on in your business. And it's a great way to grow and attract, speak. Getting your messaging down allows you to speak to your ideal client. And it's amazing when you get that messaging down, how your ideal clients begin to self-select, right? If you're hitting them with messaging and they're like, oh, well, that hits my situation. This guy understands me. He relates to me. And the amazing thing about personal branding is, what's the first thing people are going to do, right? If they don't know you online, they're going to Google you, right? Like, who is this Peyton guy, right? Like I don't know who he is. And that's where, all the consistent content you put out there provides a history for them to see. It provides a history for them to see, okay, Peyton's not this crazy scam artist on the internet, right? He's a genuine guy. It gives them plenty of content to be able to connect with me, get to know me a little bit, and see if that is, I'm the type of person that they ultimately want to work with on, in my expertise, right? So personal branding, putting yourself out there, while it's scary, and it's really hard. The hardest video you're going to do is the first one, because you're going to sit there and think about it. You're going to be so nervous to even hit the record button. But once you do it, like it's just like anything else. It's not that big of a deal. Everything in your life that you're like afraid of is because you haven't experienced it yet. And once you step into it and experience it and get used to it, it becomes a whole lot easier over time. So, talking about dealing with your insecurities and putting yourself out there, in a personal branding type situation, you really need to do the internal work and to be able to actually step into your story and own your story. I share a lot about my background and kind of what I went through as a kid. I wasn't some traumatic necessarily experience, but I certainly experienced quite a bit of chaos in my childhood. And the ability, as a kid, right, like that was something I was ashamed of, or I would say, to a degree ashamed of, and something I didn't want to talk about, right, at all. And it probably took me into my late 20s, early 30s before I began actually stepping into that situation and working on myself to be able to own that, right? Like, so it's so amazing that the people that have like the biggest, most chaotic past and traumatic events and whatnot, they have every reason not to, or I'd say every reason, every excuse not to put themselves out there or not to go after what they want, because they have this, hey, here's a huge reason why I can't do, whatever it is I want to do. I had this crazy childhood. I have all these issues and, maybe family problems or whatever, but it's the ability to own that and step into it. And once you step into that chaos and be able to share that with other people, it's amazing. The worse your history is, the most crazy things you went through is, it actually increases your influence, right? Everybody loves a comeback, right? So everybody loves the underdog. And the person that's been through the most crap and has still succeeded and has still puts themselves out there and talks about, they don't just talk about all the wins, they talk about all the crap they dealt with in the past. And that is an amazing, influential thing to do, because it allows other people who have had similar experiences to see and to understand that their excuses aren't necessarily what's holding them back, right? Everything they went through is very real, and not diminishing that. But you have to be able to take responsibility for it and move forward. And then it's amazing when you use your testimony and your story of all the crazy crap you lived through, how influential and how impactful that can be on other people. So really, to put yourself out there, start doing this personal branding, building these authentic relationships online. You just got to set down the ego, right? You got to set down the ego, be willing to suck, be willing to put yourself out there, and not afraid to fail, right? Failure is just kind of a made up term. I like to call it, and I've heard it said a lot of, it's the first attempt in learning, right? So the first attempt in learning, like, it's unreasonable to come into a situation that you've never been in before and expect you to be amazing at it. Like that just doesn't happen. Sure, you can have some natural talents and maybe storytelling or putting out content or whatever, but it's actually the tactics and experience that actually gets you better. But like, you have to be willing to suck at something for you ever to be good at it. It's a process. And if you never hit record on that first time, you're never going to get that compounding effect. You're never going to put, that future growth. You're still going to sit in the same situation you always are. And even worse, you're going to sit there and time's going to pass and you're going to sit there and think in your head, man, for years I've been thinking about doing this, this personal branding thing or whatever that thing is. And I've just been sitting here on the sidelines, and I'm no closer today than I was, 5 years ago when I first had that thought. And in fact, you're probably further away than you were when you first had that thought, because things don't just stand still. You're either growing or dying. In a dynamic world we live in, nothing is solid and stands still for any amount of time. So you have to be constantly pushing forward, or just naturally you're going to be slipping back. So, I would encourage all the listeners here to really think about, how can personal branding, being authentic online, putting yourself out there, help your business, right? And maybe it's not even a business thing. Maybe it's just, you have a passion about a topic that can be very valuable. Say it's been very valuable in your world. Like for me, I talk a lot about working out and health and all those types of things. That's not necessarily business related. I mean, in my head, it's business related, but it's putting out information like that is just good for the world, that you want to push out there, right? Some lessons you've learned and put it out there to grow values. Every person has some sort of expertise in some area or a story to share that can impact somebody else at a much deeper level than you could ever realize. And the cool thing about me doing this over the last few years is I get messages pretty consistently from people that I know very well, people that I don't, have any idea who they are. But I get a lot of messages of people thanking me and just telling me, encouraging me to keep putting content out there and telling me how maybe a podcast episode or a video or whatever, affected them. And that, as corny or cliche as it sounds, that is very satisfying to me. Money and growth of business. And I love all that stuff. Believe me, I live and breathe and eat that stuff every day, business. But it truly is like the ability to impact others and the megaphone the internet gives you to be able to impact people at scale and to spread good is amazing. And, it's a huge tool that anybody can grab a hold of and develop, right, for themselves. So, guys, if you have any inkling of doing, a podcast or a personal brand or just talking about, subjects online that you're an expertise in, you have expertise in, just do it, man. Just do it. Start putting yourself out there, hit the record button and post it. But you're going to look back on that video 5 years from now and say, wow, that was terrible. I had no idea what I was doing. And that's true. You don't have any idea what you're doing. And that's fine. And that's okay. The only way to figure out what you're doing is to start bumping around in things and start making mistakes and putting yourself out there. So I encourage everybody to do that, to build authentic relationships. And it's amazing the value that comes all out of that in business, your personal life, relationships, friends you develop out of it. It's amazing that, I've done this long enough and part of different groups and whatnot that I can go to almost any major city in the United States and have somebody there that I could have dinner with that I know, from online connections, which is really, really cool. So guys, this kind of wraps up, Rick's episode. I'm very disappointed that Rick was a fantastic guest and very disappointed that we kind of lost some of the audio and due to technical difficulties. But we really just kind of want to wrap up the episode and put a bow on it so we can use it and put out, the content that we do have from Rick. He's an amazing entrepreneur up in the Portland area and something that, everything I've just talked about in the last, 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever it is, he does in spades. And, you look at his stuff on social media online and being so in depth in the Portland entrepreneur space, it's really cool. And it's something he does in spades. But check out Rick, check out his content. And there's a lot to learn from him. And just kind of wrap it up with, a little bit of quote is like, success is built day by day, brick by brick. It is very unsexy. It is very boring at times. And that's where a lot of entrepreneurs struggle. It's because they get bored and they try to move on. And it's like, you start to get a little momentum into something and then it becomes boring really quick and you quit and you jump on to the next thing. Once again, success is built day by day with consistency, pushing in the same areas every single day and moving it a little bit forward every day. And if you do that, I promise you, eventually, with enough work and energy, you will get what you want. Nobody wants to stand in the way of something that's relentless, right? Like if you're relentless about something, no one's going to stop you. In fact, they'll get out of your way. So it's being that passionate, being that consistent, that disciplined, man, and the world's your playground. Guys, just wrapping up the episode, listeners, we'll catch you next time.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you found it valuable, please rate, review, and share it. That is the best way to help us build this and reach more people, as we're trying to accomplish our goal of help creating more healthy, wealthy, and wise entrepreneurs. You can follow us on social media by searching for me, Peyton Squires, or going to PeytonSquires.com. On the website and social media, we're always sharing tips of personal growth, and there we can actually interact. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.